Welcome, 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 everyone. This is episode 4 of the Option Menu Crew. And today we're trying to be really on the ball today, or should I say on the box, because we're recording the Saturday after the Xbox Games Showcase. So that's pretty much what we're going to be talking about today. And with us today on the crew, we have Mike.
How's it going, everyone?
We got Ed.
Hey, I'm excited to be here.
I'm your usual host, Ryan, along with the rest of the crew, and today we've got our resident Xbox mega fan, Mark, leading the episode. How you doing, Mark?
Thanks for having me.
You excited?
Super fan, mega fan. I'm very excited to talk about some Xbox, some Halo, what Microsoft has in store in the future. Let's do this.
This is the first episode you're going to be leading, and of course, as we go with different topics, different people will lead, of course. So, Mark, go ahead and take over. I'm along for this ride.
Yes. Well, I'm going to pitch a question right back at you, Ryan. Overall impressions. That's where I want to kind of start. And, last month we came out of the PlayStation event. Everybody was, I think, on cloud nine, at least, I think, from your standpoint. So kind of let's reevaluate. Where are you? Do you feel great about Microsoft's Xbox event? Do you feel like Sony still crushed them? How are you evaluating that sort of rivalry there?
Without getting too specific, it was a mixed bag for me. There wasn't a lot of positive stuff, but there's still things I was kind of hoping for that didn't happen. And there's certain ways they handled the presentation that I wasn't a fan of. I think Sony did a slightly better job, but also Sony did have the big drop of the console reveal, so that's kind of unfair.
Sure.
But yeah, it was kind of a mixed bag for me on the showcase. But I did walk away with a bunch of positive notes as well, so I don't want that to be lost.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a good call out right away too. This is kind of Microsoft's second event like this. The first one we were looking more at the hardware and quote unquote some gameplay, but most of that, of course, I think, as everybody knows on the podcast today, a lot of it was cinematics on that first showing. So,
and it is a substantial improvement over that one. I will say that.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely okay, because this is kind of the second iteration, and they've already said, we're going to have even more. And that's, what I'm excited about most. We're now late July, maybe a few more than a few months away from the holiday 2020 launch. But yeah, as far as Mike and Ed, what did you guys kind of think overall first impressions of the Xbox event?
I'd say I was initially underwhelmed, but I definitely took some time to think about it. And there are certainly titles in there that are interesting to me. But mostly I'm just interested to see where Microsoft goes with their services like Game Pass. There isn't
Right.
really anything like that on PlayStation. Even if I do end up with a PS5, I might be a little jealous of those Xbox people.
Hey, well, if you have a PC, you can also join the club.
I saw some games in there that looked exciting to me. There wasn't like a lot of games that really excited me, but there were definitely some that, including Halo, that looked pretty awesome, I would say.
Well, I'm happy you said Halo, because that segues very nicely into where we're headed next. The big elephant in the room, Halo. I think that stole the show, at least in my opinion. I think a lot of Xbox fans in general. I loved it. It was awesome. Ryan, what did you kind of think? Because I know you and I have played Halo together. I know you've been playing Halo 3 on the Master Chief Collection on PC a lot lately. Again, we're recording this a couple days after the Xbox event. So what did you think as soon as, Master Chief kind of touched down on the ring once again and started battling some of the grunts?
So the one thing that was sticking out to me the most going into the presentation with Halo, what I was hoping to find out is, okay, where is this in the timeline? Because I know the armor has now kind of gone back to a more classic thing. They've obviously done some heavy redesigns with 4 and 5. So I was curious, I'm like, and 5 had a cliffhanger of a story ending where I was curious where they were going to take that. So what I was kind of looking at is this, are they going to tell me what the timeline is? And they specifically pointed out it was the campaign, so I wanted to see this. Then looking at the trailer or the demonstration, I should say, as it went on, it established, it seems this is actually back. They're going backwards in time and doing, based on extra notes I read from additional articles and follow-ups in the week going past the initial presentation, this is a spiritual reboot. So that was really funny to me to see that they're kind of not continuing the story yet for what happened with the end of Halo 5,
Right.
especially since, to my understanding, it was a lackluster fan response to the plot for various reasons. No need to get into for spoiler reasons. So
Sure.
then I focused on the gameplay, and I was like, okay, this is Halo. All right, you shoot grunts. That's the first thing you shoot. Got it. You're using the assault rifle,
Yes.
or is it the battle rifle? Is that the
First weapon I believe was the assault rifle. Yep,
assault rifle? Okay.
the 48 magazine assault rifle. Yeah.
So you do that, you shoot grunts right away. I was just like, okay, Warthog, driving section, got it, perfect. They zoom out, they show the map, they show it's like this big space. You've got 3
Yeah.
points you're gonna have to hit. I'm like, okay, so it looks like the rumors about the open world are kind of true, or at least it's gonna be much bigger missions. So that's neat. Play through, see the grapple hook, and as soon as I saw the grapple hook, I was just like, oh, someone played Doom Eternal. So I started having those comparisons. Everything else looked very Halo to me. There were some new visual effects, like when the shield generation, there was an extra screen effect when that started. So that was kind of neat. I'm like, okay, that's good extra visual cues. Not being a real Halo fan, the overall demonstration looked very Halo in my impression, but I wasn't very enthused by it. And then upon rewatching it, I kind of went, like, this isn't even like a big showpiece or something. Like, what? Like, there's not really a lot of excitement to glean from this. So I was really
Interesting.
surprised upon review and giving it some more thought. I was just like, wow, this was very much like, I guess it feels like traditional Halo. So I'm more interested from you, Mark. Is this like, did it really feel like they're going back to traditional Halo? Did you want a big set piece or something? Or was this the perfect demonstration as a hardcore Halo fan that you needed to see?
Yeah, and just to take a step back to Halo, Halo in general, I would say is probably top 3 series. I'm at my core, Gears of War is my favorite, but I think Halo is like number 2, number 3, right with usually Splinter Cell, which has been a few years since that series has had a revisit. So
Okay.
I'm very excited for Halo as far as where we left things off. So the visuals, awesome. Gameplay looked great. The only thing that I was really truly missing was the multiplayer. You know, that was something that
Yeah.
kept me playing Halo 5 over and over again. It took me, I think, 5 years to beat the single player. I just beat that a couple of weeks back in 2020. So, and again, we don't need to spend any more time on that. But as far as the multiplayer, Halo 5 was incredible. They have already mentioned they are going to show off some multiplayer in the future. So, you know, get the countdown timer set and ready to go. It's definitely something that I'm eagerly counting down. But again, visuals look great. The grappling gun totally caught me off guard. I really like the weapons that they showcase as well. The new
Okay.
the new revolver that looked
Is that
awesome.
new?
That looked, yes.
Okay.
They've never had a revolver like that in, you know, the Halo series. It's always been, well, maybe in Halo 3 there was no, I don't think there was. I think there was something that looked very similar with the
With
with the
the loading chamber like that barrel loading chamber.
right, and I'm trying to remember the type of those not the elites, those other characters that I cannot remember their names right now. But needless to say, I don't know. It was very cool. It was very exciting. I really liked, again, the revolver, the shotgun. The shotgun actually threw me off. I don't know. That looks so similar to the revolver that I wasn't quite sure if it was an attachment and if the two kind of worked together. So as far as the weapons go, everything looked great. It even looked like there was a DMR assault rifle. Usually that's a single fire. That was showcased about 3/4 of the way through, just after Master Chief jumped out of that little turret and took down
Yeah.
a whole bunch of people.
Two more points on Halo for me. There's been controversy online that the visuals, like, people aren't responding well to the visuals, and I have
Yeah.
to say I disagree with that. I don't know what people are looking for. I've talked with some of my friends, and they were saying like the shadow work wasn't as great. I don't know how much that is
Well,
like a matter of the setting and their expectations versus if it's actually bad. But I didn't think it looked bad. I thought it looked great, and it was running at 60 FPS, so that's what I wanted to
one
see. I don't know what people are looking for. I think that people are being way too overly critical on the
One-
Yeah,
visuals.
I was gonna say I was watching an interview with the developer, and he was saying that it was just like it's just early, like they're still working on the game, like they're seeing improvements each week. So like by the time they get to that holiday release, it's gonna look 10 times better. And also, how much can you see when you're watching it online versus when you're watching it or when you're playing it in 4K on your TV.
That's what I was going to say is we're watching a compressed YouTube stream versus, something that has a much higher bit rate on your console. That's, that's where the power is coming from opposed to, a lower bit rate YouTube video. So visually things look stunning. I'm not expecting, even 8K potentially on YouTube. It's just, I watched a 4K 60 frame stream of it. It looked great on the monitor that I was on. As far as shadows not looking up to par, I don't know. I think it's just people trying to nitpicky. But if that's the worst part about at least the Halo showing, is that some of the visuals weren't up to their part. I think that's speaking of the gameplay. It looks fun. It looks intriguing. So Ed, I'm kind of curious. Are you much of a first-person shooter? Are you intrigued by what Halo had to showcase?
I've actually never played a Halo game, and I'm
Okay.
not much of a shooter fan. Coming out of it, I think if I were, I'd be pretty excited about the gameplay.
Yeah.
One thing I haven't heard anyone here mention is the idea that the developer says this is the last Halo game they're going to make for a while, and they were discussing something like a 10-year plan. That goes into the idea of the graphics improving. I think that ray tracing is going to be an update that will come after release.
That's an official announcement,
Right.
yeah.
Yes, it is. And I wonder how Halo fans are going to take to. I don't know if it's going to be a live service game like Destiny, but that's kind of like is everyone's thinking like, is this going to be Destiny? Probably not, but it does beg the question of how is it going to change over the years, and what kind of monetization schemes are they going to pursue?
Yeah, and I'm happy you brought that up
Maybe not.
because
Maybe that's the whole point of Game Pass is these games are living and they do get to grow or for that low subscription fee. But we can talk about Game Pass later.
yeah, sorry, I cut you off there, but yeah, I'm happy that you brought that up because that was something that I actually had rumored right before the event in the sense of is this new Halo game going to be a game as a service type of long-term commitment? And open for discussion. I know Ryan and I were chatting about it internally a little bit. From my standpoint, I'm curious to see how the direction that they would take it. I also heard there were going to be potential like upgrades. Halo being a little bit different with an open world, there's definitely some new layers being built onto it. But let me see what they got in mind. They're the creative team. I'm just the gamer, the passionate gamer that is. So, Ryan, what are you thinking as far as if this game existed with updates for the next 5 to 10 years?
So I can see them supporting the multiplayer exactly as is insinuated right now, because that makes sense. Halo's big thing is its multiplayer. They usually put in tons of modes. There's the stage forge. So a lot of that stuff will probably be supported into the future, and I can see that easily doing that, adding customization and different elements for new stages and whatnot. I could or fields or whatever they're called. I can see that totally being their service model going forward. That makes sense. Now understanding that it's like a spiritual reboot and they're going back in time and doing this new conflict. And Mark, just for clarification, is the Banished the Halo Wars faction?
Yes, the
Atriox is
Halo, right. But so I'm not as in depth as the full Halo story. I've played Halo Wars very, very briefly, both 1 and 2.
Okay.
I don't follow up to the minute with all the books as well.
No problem. Just wanted to check before it. So it sounds like if the conflict is in this weird section that's somewhere around like Halo 1 and 2, and they're exploring this new conflict that's not, it's kind of in a continuation of something from Halo Wars, which is probably a nice little excerpt for fans, especially if they haven't played Halo Wars. I can see now what we were talking about before outside the podcast was the potential that the campaign itself will also be serviced, where they will do expansions to the campaign. And now knowing that they're in a weird place in the timeline, I could now see it now more realistically being a little more episodic. It could totally not be, and I hope it's not, or maybe they do like a nice big full campaign that still leaves the cliffhanger, and then they do a couple expansions. Like I could see that happening now that it's this established more clearly where it is. But I think it's just the multiplayer, and that's completely fine. That's where the way a lot of games go these days, so that makes a lot of sense. It's just whether or not the campaign is going to also follow that way. I don't think they're going to add stats or anything like Destiny. I think it's going to be very much straight up Halo campaign. You get a set of missions, you're going to do it. Maybe you will play as Chief, maybe you won't play as Chief. If they're learning from their other things. They're just going to do chief.
Well, you have gotten, skulls and kind of like co-op points and stats, not necessarily like upgradable attributes, such as
The skulls were like
Destiny.
collectibles, which is fine.
Right,
And
right.
weren't they
But,
difficulty modifiers? Like they
yeah,
increase the
not
difficulty.
not only were they difficulty modifiers, but you also had like an arcade score in, I believe, Halo 4 and 5 is when they started doing that, where if you
Really?
turned it on, yeah, you'd actually have like, you'd get a double kill and all the other
Oh.
call outs if you enabled it. If you wanted the true traditional no frills, well, not really no frills, but the authentic campaign without any of those added perks, it was a different kind of storefront in a way, or entry point.
Okay. And the other point I wanted to make before also as a bit of a criticism, I'm really surprised they didn't talk a little bit more about the multiplayer. I get it
Right.
that they're going to do like a big in-depth reveal later, and they're doing this protracted marketing because they can. But I think it was a bit of a disservice and a disappointment, especially because multiplayer is such a big part of Halo, for them not to be like, we're going to have Slayer, Team Slayer, and we can't wait to unveil our new mode and just name drop it and then let people speculate on what that is. I think they're probably going to put in some sort of Battle Royale-esque type mode, or maybe they'll completely stay away from it and say, like, Halo's not about
Halo-
Battle Royale, but
Halo made it pretty clear the only BR they want in their game is the battle rifle. So,
was it going to be BR, DMR? Are we going to have both?
well, they have had both, I believe, in Halo 5. But yeah, you also brought up a good point, though. As far as this July 23rd event, do we think that this was in direct response to how the PlayStation 5 show went on June, what was it, late June, mid-June? Do we think that it was a direct response to that? Do we think that this was something that was already planned? I can't remember the exact timing on when they launched the July 23rd date.
They didn't announce the date right away, but they said they were doing another presentation at the very end of the previous presentation. So I believe this was always planned. I don't think the date really changed, maybe a little bit for editing purposes, but if anything, my suspicion is more editing to clarify which projects are still on track and which demos are ready to be shown versus making any major responses to like the style or formatting of PlayStations. I think they may have tightened up some things, maybe, but from seeing that, or from seeing the two now and being able to compare them, I don't think Microsoft mimicked it too much, or I think in some ways, I don't know if we're going to get into specific later, but I do have some specific criticisms on the presentation's format and the way they kind of split things up into a pre-show and main show.
Yeah, and let's get to that in 1 minute. Mike, did you have anything else to add? I know you're an Xbox guy as well. Do you have any burning desire to get Halo Infinite on day one?
Yeah, I think it looks pretty sweet. There's new and familiar weapons that we saw. I think the story looks compelling, and overall, I'm excited for the new Halo game. I haven't beaten all the Halo games in the past, but I've played through a fair amount of them, and this one looks to continue the great legacy of the series. So those are my thoughts. Yeah,
they did confirm 4-player split screen for Halo Infinite, so that's something we'll have to plan on as a friend group.
Yes, in person.
In person, just because.
TV for that.
I will probably have one by then.
So yeah, that was the big showcase. In my opinion, I feel like this was the Halo event. There were certainly a lot of other games, but the big takeaway from my standpoint was Halo looks awesome. That's just what we wanted. No disappointments necessarily on that front. It was just, I do wish that there was a little bit of multiplayer, maybe even like a 10-second tease could have been, everything that we were looking for. But I am looking for, let's also remember the layout of these presentations are a little bit different than what we're used to. There's no more E3, at least in this year. So not only everybody working from home, this approach is a bit different, and I think a lot of these teams are being tasked with changing very quickly. So what I'm trying to say is I think this was a great showing, but I'm still very excited to see what they got coming in the next couple of months. So Ryan, you had mentioned just a second ago a couple of disappointments from the overall show. So before we go further on to the games, I kind of want to touch on overall impressions and what else from the show that you saw that you weren't necessarily much of a fan of.
So at first I wasn't going to watch the pre-show, and then I started seeing on Twitter comments coming out about announcements in there. I'm like, oh, I have to now check this out. And I went back, and luckily there was only a couple, but there was a few big games, and then there was an indie montage. Most of it was Jeff Keighley of the Game Awards, that was hosted. The official stream for the official pre-show was hosted on that YouTube channel. So I went back, I skipped through everything. It was mostly influencers and other YouTubers watching that. So I just went through and looked at the announcements and got a little bit of context, because most of them were just gushing about, I can't wait to see what Halo was, which is fine. This is the Xbox show, and Halo was the big highlighting point. Well, for other people. For me, however, the real star of the show and the best example of what should be the way every game announcement is handled was in the pre-show, and it completely trumped Halo, in my opinion. So before I get there, I think just the way they did the pre-show and the main show, like splitting it up, especially with some of the announcements they had, completely threw off the pacing. They spent a little too much time showing trailers that had no gameplay in them. Too many trailers without gameplay in them. And I think this is a valid criticism. It should always be brought up, and it shouldn't be skated by, well, that's just because it's the industry. Oh, they're going to do another one. Oh, these games are early. Oh, COVID threw it off. Like, some of these games have been in development for a long time, and there's no reason you should be showing off a game before you can't show us gameplay, because you don't just watch the trailer. If you want to just watch something, you'll just watch a YouTube video. There's no reason to not be showing us gameplay trailers at this point in the industry speaking. So hold off your announcements. Or just bullet point list and put it out in a press release. There's no point in putting out these teaser trailers. They're just not. I personally don't find them exciting. They make me anti-hype unless it's a stylized trailer that shows gameplay just cut properly. And I can say, like, the Tell Me Why game is an example of, like, I know what Don't Nod's games look and play like, so them just showing me this and giving me this mood teaser, I'm like, I know what I'm in for. So that's fine, because you have a history of doing it a certain way, and this is going to be one of those games, so I get it. Halo, I think, did pretty good. I think they could have done a little bit more for hyping and teasing, like the multiplayer, doing like a better story tease with like a little short trailer that was heavily edited. Those kind of things, little there, could have improved Halo, or picking a better set piece to show off the campaign. Something exciting, asks a lot of questions, still could have set up the bad guy. Little critiques like that.
Yeah.
But
Can we also?
You think you're being a little harsh on them to not having? I mean, the PlayStation thing, there were a lot of trailers there, but I guess you felt the same way, that trailers without gameplay were not appealing to you.
Right, and there was more gameplay trailers, or at least in my opinion, there was more gameplay trailers shown in the Sony's presentation than it was for Xbox. And even though
we're also more games too, just to be clear.
A few, yeah, that's true, but that doesn't matter, because Xbox still could have outdone them, because there was a couple games in PlayStation that didn't have gameplay or were super early. Like I even pointed out, despite the fact that I was interested in it, Pragmata, and I was like, why are you showing this game? Like, sure, it was an engine, and I could tell it was an engine, but it's 2022. Why are you even showing this? There's no point. Like,
right.
It's too early.
Yeah.
So, to give an example of what I basically want every gameplay showing, though Halo was pretty good. They did pretty good, like I said. They only needed a few things I think they could have done to really to sell that hype at this point, even though they're going to do more. In the pre-show, the big new game from Square Enix, from former developers of Sega, Balan Wonderworld. That presentation, that reveal was darn near perfect. The only thing that could have made it absolutely perfect was a specific release date. I think they said it was spring 2021, and I get that. But everything else, like they teased it, they showed art, then they showed in-game gameplay, they explained what the systems were, they had a good trailer that set the mood, a little bit of the story with a nice tease, the characters, explained what was going to happen in that game. We had never heard about this before. I'm pretty sure there were no rumors or nothing I was aware of. It's a brand new IP. That is how you reveal a game, especially a brand new game, or even a sequel. Like, that is what you do. That is how you do it. And every other developer and publisher who doesn't market like that should be ashamed. And just get with the program at this point. It's not that hard. If your game isn't at that point to show, don't show your game. And if you don't have enough games to fill it, then you're doing something wrong on the industry side. That's how I feel about that. And that's how I felt about the presentation. There's still a bunch of other good points. I'm kind of just leaving out specifics on the good points because they're more specifically the games. And Microsoft did at least have kind of a tighter presentation. It was closer to it, and it's those other parts that really stick out where it's like the information's out there. Just fix it. Just do it the right way.
So one thing that I can't keep thinking about is Ubisoft's presentations. I know
Mhm.
they had one recently. They have another one coming up in the future as well as does Xbox. But Ubisoft, I feel like more than any other developer, is known for showing off some gameplay potentially too early. Specifically, Watch
Yeah.
Dogs, Rainbow Six Siege, and these games change vastly in terms of a graphical standpoint for when they actually come out. So,
Well,
how
if
do
you
you go ahead?
Oh, go ahead. Finish your question.
I was just going to ask, how do you feel about, seeing this gameplay and then 2 years later, the game is different. And, you buy a game based on what you saw years back because it's kind of planted the seed. And now, how would you feel if, hey, the city doesn't look exactly like this or the lighting is way different? I know Anthem was another example too.
Oh, sure.
Don't bring Anthem into this conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not
that's
not
a
right now.
little bit of a can of worms.
That's a good point, and it feeds into what I was saying. You shouldn't be announcing a game 2 years out. You shouldn't be doing it. Even if you have gameplay. If you announce the
Right.
game and had those vertical slices is usually what happens. And so it's a very small portion of game. They tighten it up. It's conceptual. That's better than just a CG trailer, in my opinion. But if you're not announcing a game that's only 6 to 9 months out, there's no point. Like, don't do it. Because the game could
Yeah.
still get canceled in that 2 years. So
I think
then
it's
that's
I think it's riskier, but also
Mhm.
keep in mind investors and the underlying business operations that are taking place. It's not so much just how the gamers feel about things and the hype associated with it. It's we need investors putting money in to continue this project, and if there's concerns for doubt, then the project may be killed before it ever reaches the light of day.
That's correct that happens. That's another criticism I have of the industry, that too much emphasis is put on investors and what they want, which is just money. And that's where I harken back to what I said previously: is you're doing it wrong. If your budget and your finances and your stockholders are completely focused on this one game, you're doing it wrong. You should have a portfolio of games that are coming out throughout the years of different sizes that are bringing in money at all times, and then you know that your good game is going to be good and you've given it the time, and then you announce it and you've got 6 to 9 months and you'll see the reaction to that. And of course, a lot of games are sequels. And picking on Ubisoft specifically, they make the same game. They just call it 5 different things at this point. So that's why it's super
Yeah.
consistent at this point. Assassin's Creed, Watch Dogs, Far Cry, they're all the same thing except Far Cry's first person, but it's just reskin. So they move the camera also for Far Cry, so you could say they're trying a little bit harder, I guess,
Yeah.
depending on how you
Well,
want to interpret that. So
I
I'm
think
gonna
we're
offer
getting a little off topic as
Yeah,
far
I'm
as
just gonna say I think you're a little harsh, and think there's a place for the kind of games that Ubisoft makes. I think there's a place for a teaser trailer to get people excited. I don't think it's as cut and dry as you say. And I certainly, there have been situations where I saw a teaser trailer or even a logo in the case of Metroid Prime 4, and I was excited and not unhappy to even know that it was years out. I
so
think
yeah,
I think different strokes for different folks on that, but I certainly can appreciate your point of view.
let me make a more specific example, getting back on track to Xbox. Everwild. I am very interested because the art direction in that teaser trailer, they're showing magic, they're showing crazy animals.
yeah.
I'm very intrigued. I have no idea what that game is, which makes me go, I guess I shouldn't care at this point. Like, ooh, pretty. But I can
Right.
go watch an animated Netflix series if I just want to see pretty art. So, like, give me a reason to want this game. And the reason I've gotten to this point is it is my history with the game industry. I've seen this happen before, and it's gone either way. Oftentimes, it's gone negative, or maybe I'm just remembering the negative things more often because they're so disappointing. But that's where it comes from. That's where the perspective comes from, even if I'm sounding a little too harsh. But I am trying to acknowledge the business realities and things like that. I just think the business side can work the way it should and still make money.
I think there's just a lot of uncertainties, but I'm not going to make any more excuses for the developers themselves. I think we can all agree, Halo stole the show. The other thing that I wanted to segue into, that in my opinion, I think it was, if not the number one, it would absolutely be the number two most important detail of the entire presentation, was the focus on Game Pass. Early on, Phil Spencer came in and mentioned, and I think this is also going back to why they did a pre versus main event showing, is that not everything necessarily in the pre-show, I don't believe was in Game Pass, whereas everything in the main event, and I'm sure you guys caught this detail as well, everything was going to be included on Game Pass. And that, in my opinion, again, huge selling point on next generation. They showed off 22 games in that in those 60 minutes, and all of which are going to be available at a low cost, whatever subscription you want on console, on PC, on both, whatever approach you go there. So, Ed, I know this is something that we chatted about briefly earlier as well. Would you potentially jump ship and flip over if there were more exclusives, or just knowing that you only had to pay $5, $10 or whatever it may be to have this full collection available and so many other games?
Well, I I think it's an admirable goal to have the library of games available for a low monthly price. Just so from what I saw here, there wasn't a whole lot that I felt was interesting. And I think there were a lot of games that had the potential to be good, but maybe not to be great. Um, and I think this is just a symptom of a generality of this type of service. Is you think about streaming video like Netflix or others, it, their main goal is to keep you subscribed.
Sure.
And I don't think to do that they necessarily need to have the best content. I think they just need to have good enough content to where you do see the value. So I don't think it would cause me to jump ship unless they were really consistently putting out great hits. And that may be the case in several years. I know that Microsoft acquired a bunch of studios, and it takes time to start new projects and to take them to completion.
Yeah,
But
and they've
I
said they're
almost feel
not.
like when you say it's $10 a month to play all the games that come out, it becomes a race to the bottom. And
Yeah,
I do think there is value in having strong IPs that people are willing to pay for.
and I think you're onto something. I don't think it should be to any surprise. Grand Theft Auto 5 left Game Pass, and then shortly thereafter, Red Dead Redemption 2 came into the Game Pass library. So, there's definitely a little bit of that balance. You're not going to have the top 10 selling games on Game Pass at any particular time. At
Oh,
least
that's a dig at Xbox One's first party titles that come day and
Un-
date to Game Pass.
unintentionally, of course.
That's what I was getting at, but I didn't want to. I don't get too down on
I'm being
Microsoft
comedic
because
because
they
Yeah.
are they are trying, and I definitely want to commend them for effort.
Yeah.
I think they're doing a good thing for the industry. It just I think time will tell as to whether or not they can execute it well enough.
I've had a Game Pass subscription now for a little bit of time. I had it on and off a couple years back, but it seems like it's been a great service. And occasionally I'll just jump into a new game, and I feel like I've been getting a better value from it. And then, like a presentation like this, I have no desire to cancel it anytime soon, knowing that, all right, I agree, Ed. I don't think that there were necessarily, out of the 22 games that were on there, probably less than 5 are games that I would potentially even think about playing. There were quite a few that just didn't necessarily, hit the proper boxes on my end, for my own personal belief. But again, I think let's be real, they probably had 18 or so games figured out, and then it was like, hey, these are all going to be on Game Pass. Let's make this squashing point. Everything in this show is going to be on Game Pass. And again, I think that's a huge detail that cannot be missed, and it's a huge win that anything that you saw from that presentation you can play. So, Mike, how
The
did you
other thing
feel?
I find concerning about Game Pass is that I mean I think if I think Microsoft would rather have you subscribing to their service than buying their games outright. And as we know, for something like I'm going to go back to the same analogy, but for something like HBO, Game of Thrones, one show made the service for many people, and
Yeah,
I wonder if it gets to the point where Microsoft will say you can only play this game if you subscribe to Game Cat Pass, and
that's an interesting.
I'm wary of that direction of the industry moving away towards ownership and towards a subscription model.
It'd be
And it
very
may be
difficult though
inevitable,
for the.
but they'll drag me kicking and screaming.
I think that would be very difficult though, thinking about it from a logistics standpoint. A studio saying you can't buy your game direct, you have to go through a subscription. But if there's exclusive rights and money behind the scenes under the table, whatever it may take, I'm sure anything can happen.
bring up a relevant point to that. Technically, digital games you don't own either. You have licensed
Of course.
the software, so we're already kind of giving up that right, even with a straight digital purchase. So the Game Pass service is almost more honest and legitimate and fair as a value because it's like, especially on PC, where it's essentially one of the few ways you can rent and try a game outside of an official demo, that you can try all these different games for a very affordable price, find out if you really like it, and you can pay more and own the copy to have it perpetually there so you never have to worry about it leaving the service. Or you have your fun with it and then it goes away. And it must be stated how impressive it is that Microsoft has so much confidence in its software to be putting its first party titles on their day and date. And that's a very positive mark in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Mike, are you a Game Pass subscriber currently?
I was up until earlier this month.
Okay. Does it have enough of your attention that you are going to go back later this year? I know some of these games are actually coming out sooner than later, one of which we'll get to in just a minute. What's your latest take on it?
That was kind of my question, is like, I know that I want to play the new Halo Infinite game. So maybe once that comes out, maybe I'll subscribe for a little bit and play through that and check out some other games. And they recently switch how that works, how Game Pass works.
Well, they've introduced the ultimate tier. Is that what you're referring to?
Didn't they used to have like a 12-month subscription, and now it's just like you can only, or is that just gold?
That's more
that
about
was for gold.
Right.
Now they
Oh,
only
okay.
sell 3
Sorry
month
about
and
that.
1 month subscriptions.
But interesting you brought it up because I think they are actually directly related, even though they're sort of different SKU numbers. Essentially, my take on it, I believe Game Pass is going to be the bottom line. You know, that is your gold plus your subscription. But I think we save that topic for another day because we have very, very scarce details right now. All that's been said is just 12-month subscriptions from Microsoft has been confirmed. It's no longer an option. 1 month, 3, and 6, I believe, are the only available purchases.
I am
Right
really
now for gold.
surprised that wasn't addressed somewhere in the presentation because the timing made it seem like, oh, they're definitely going to drop some more details. And considering the focus on the Game Pass value from all the games in the presentation, I was really surprised there wasn't some messaging, even in post-release content or interviews or press releases.
I could see that being part of a price conversation. Perhaps maybe it's $15 a month for Game Pass Ultimate and 30 and you get the console. You don't have to buy the console. You could be going down that pricing route. So we shall see, like you said.
Yeah, and why I pay $60 for Halo when I could pay $15 a month and have it for 4 months and play all these other great games as well. And then who knows? Maybe I'd keep it. We have to see.
That's exactly what they exactly. So another game that I thought really stood out, very, very goofy, kind of comedic intro, Grounded. They open it up. If you're looking for the most exciting game of the year, more or less buy Cyberpunk. But if you're looking for something a little bit different and unique, take a look at Grounded. Grounded is the battle royale open world. You're smaller than an ant. You're basically Honey, We Shrunk the Kids type of type of world. So what did you guys think of that trailer? I thought that was very unique and in my opinion kind of stood out as a surprise.
Pretty sure it's a survival game, not a battle royale game.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah, no problem. It was interesting. I think that aesthetic or that setting, the shrunken aspect of being these normal people, being super small in the normal world and how that changes your perspective on everything, I find that infinitely fascinating. I would just have preferred it to not be this sandbox survival game. Again, there are certain games that interest me like that, but I really want a strong campaign. And a lot of these games, I just go like, hey, like the co-op's great. I think Borderlands is like the perfect example of how you do a game that's focused on a campaign, but just says drop in, drop out multiplayer and adds to the experience perfectly. So I just want to see more of that. And this is, once again, super interesting setting and concept with just a format that's not quite what I'm looking for. But it's coming to Game Pass and it's going to be beta, so I'd be willing to give it a try with you guys. So that's the best I can say.
Yeah. I don't know if it's necessarily something that I'll potentially buy, But as far as the trailer, they caught my eye. It was kind of interesting from my standpoint. So Ed, Mike, did either of you guys have anything else with that trailer? Again, in my opinion, it kind of stood out just as a goofy kind of take.
Yeah, I don't think that's the type of game they normally make, right? The
I think
developer.
Xbox is making a lot of types of games that they don't normally make. That's probably the most exciting thing about Game Pass is they're really going for something for everyone, and they're trying to get people to branch out. So I think that's
Right.
kind of the theme of the platform in general. But yeah,
Yeah,
I haven't seen like anything like this from Microsoft before.
I think we saw games from 15 different studios, if I'm not
9
wrong.
of their
9?
15
9 of it.
internal studios showed off stuff, not counting
Okay.
third-party partners.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, it looked interesting. I don't know if I would actually play it, but it looked different.
It wasn't any Balan
I'd give it a
Wonderworld,
shot.
but
I'd
it's
give it a shot.
yeah, I'd give it a try if we had some people. Like that's one of those things where I'd jump in and go, "Yo, you guys want to goof around? We all got Game Pass. Why not just load it up and try it for a night?"
For sure, for sure. So that was one that kind of stood out, but I think the one game that stood out more than anything else from a wasn't expecting this and kind of did a double take, like, wait, what? Was Jack Black, yes, featured in Psychonauts 2. I am a huge, huge, huge Jack Black fan. He's just living, breathing, positive energy. Just he's the best. I love Tenacious D. It's not like I've been to a concert of theirs ever. I know I've seen his movies before, but my obsession with Jack Black has just been growing and growing and growing in 2020. He's been putting out these incredible, hilarious Let's Plays, playing Red Dead. Like he's trying to be a gamer. I'll be nice. He could definitely improve his game, especially with the first person shooters. I'm looking at Doom, especially when he was playing with his son. But it's just there's something about him. I love him. So when I saw that he was going to be featured in Psychonauts 2, like that's not a game I've played before, at least the first one, but I
played
definitely
the
want
first
to play.
one.
Yeah,
And
what did you
I
think of the
loved
first
it.
one?
I'm so excited. I mean, I've been excited for Psychonauts 2 for years. I mean, it was supposed to come out in 2018, then 2020, now it's like the 2021, but
Yeah.
I think it'll be worth the wait. It's funny, like the most exciting game to me in this presentation was one that I'm probably going to buy on PlayStation. So,
Yeah, but there's nothing
because
wrong with that.
it's still coming to PS4. They are still bringing to that platform.
Yeah.
But that
Well,
is
we're all
also
gamers at the end
a
of the day.
positive for Microsoft in terms of their acquisitions. Is Double Fine they've done some cool stuff. So that's something that certainly makes me more interested in what Microsoft Game Studios could produce.
Yeah.
And it's okay because you're still supporting Microsoft for supporting this game, even if it's on PlayStation. That has to be noted. Like Double Fine is owned by Microsoft now, so it's just awesome that's going to be there. And for me, like I'm buying most of these games on PC, so if I don't play it through Game Pass, which I will keep an active subscription for, I will then also buy them individually as I'm confident in purchasing them. But yeah, Psychonauts 2 I thought looked amazing. That stage looked fantastic. Jack Black's cameo was neat. I think he's a cool dude. It is still a little cheap with the celebrity plugs, but it kind of works. But what I saw in the game was totally made me just forget about that because it just looks so great. I haven't played the first one, but I totally want to play the second one, and I probably will try to play the first one right before the second one comes out.
You really
Right on.
should. I played it on Steam, and it's probably my top 3D platform of all time. I love the themes in it. I think the level design is really creative, and it's generally funny. And I don't think there are that many games that really nail the humor and personality the way that Psychonauts does.
Yeah, it's tough.
All right. I think we are going to take a quick break and we will be right back. All right, we're back, Mike.
Oh, so I wanted to mention.
We're not going to do that.
Oh, okay.
I think I'm going to keep that in because that was
If
really
you
funny.
want, I'll do it.
I already did it, so just roll into it.
Do. All right.
Keep going, Mike.
Oh, okay. So I was going to start off talking about Tetris Effects. So I have Tetris Effects for PlayStation 4. So for that one, I've played it in VR, and it looks really spectacular with all the special effects. And I play it for it feels like 15 minutes, but it's like an hour or two has gone by, and it's just like, I don't know, it's the music and the effects, the special effects are just so mesmerizing. So the Tetris effects connected, where like you can play against all your friends, that seems awesome. Although I probably would get like DLC or something for the one on PlayStation. I think it's really awesome that this game is coming to Xbox. And would you guys think you would pick up Tetris Effects, or would you just play it on Game Pass?
If
Well,
someone,
I'm
go ahead.
I'm kind of upset that I've never played the VR version over at your place. I'm
Oh,
surprised.
it's a recent purchase.
Okay, that makes more sense. But yeah, I'm a big Tetris fan. I feel like it's the most classic. You know, it's got such a crazy historical story as far as how it even came to the country and how it evolved. I would definitely recommend you guys check out the full story. I know Nintendo Life created a story relatively recently, but back to the game. Looks awesome. Multiplayer for Tetris, super cool. Reminds me very much of Nintendo's recent take with their online battle royale. You know, put that in air quotes. So
Tetris
certainly
99.
something. Tetris 99. Thank you. I thought that's what it was called. Thank you. Definitely something
It is
I
a
would.
battle royale. There's no air quotes there. It is a battle royale. Just-
Yeah, we're not gonna split hairs right now, but whether I buy it or Game Pass it, it's definitely going to be downloaded on my console, and whether it's coming to PC as well, for sure.
I was gonna say if someone didn't bring it up, I was totally going to bring up Tetris Effect Connected and be like, "Who's with me?" Because I'm pretty sure it's gonna be multiplayer or couch co-op, or not couch co-op, but couch multiplayer as well as online multiplayer. And it does look like it's a sort of a combination of, and it's probably different modes as well, of either versus or also cooperative. Because as the camera zoomed out towards the end of that trailer, like all the maps merged together, so you're kind of trying to make giant lines across the board, and you're just in charge of your own little section of that whole thing. So that looked pretty fun. After playing Tetris 99 with Mark when he got it on Switch Online, I started getting back into Tetris and learned a few tricks and stuff. So yeah, if you guys are down to play it, I'm down to play it, and when things get back to normal and we can actually hang out in person, then obviously we can always rotate on whoever buys it for whatever platform. So I think that'll be pretty easy to get into.
For sure.
Yeah.
And another thing I wanted to hint on, or pose as a question, was as far as like VR goes for Xbox, do you think this hints at it, or am I just reaching for the stars?
Stars.
Yeah, I think you're reaching that.
I think Microsoft would be even afraid to invest in something like that after their experience with the Kinect. Just another peripheral. I don't know if they're going to take their business in
They
that
had
direction.
the HoloLens too, was another thing that they were.
That was
The
like an
only time I ever saw one of those in use was when I was at the Kennedy Space Center looking into Mars. So I don't know if that has been used at all in gaming, but we'll
It
see.
has to be mentioned that Microsoft was partnering briefly. I don't know if it's still an active partnership. They briefly partnered with Oculus. They put the Xbox One controllers in the box for Oculus VR support. So I think it's unlikely. It's not a big plan right now. I believe Phil Spencer did an interview in the last couple months where he mentioned that VR is not a focus for them right now because their audience is not asking for VR, which makes sense. But if the Xbox Series X is as powerful as they say it is, it's likely they could always make a big update and allow Oculus or other types of VR headsets to be brought onto Xbox for VR specific titles. Or, since it is their new Series branding, they can always do Xbox Series VR, and they can make a dedicated box that's super powerful, plays regular games, but also has like dedicated extra ports for VR headsets, or hopefully VR headsets will also evolve into much more wireless,
Or
well-performing varieties.
a standalone thing. I was just gonna say. Sorry.
So I think it's unlikely right now, but it's not out of the question.
Yeah.
Time will tell on that piece as well. So, Ed, did you have anything else to add with Tetris?
Oh, I was going to chime in, but Mike and I, one of our games in our multiplayer rotation is Puyo Puyo Tetris. I'm a big fan. It's a fun multiplayer game. It's good to have a little competition, and I played on as many platforms as I could. I mean, Tetris is a classic for a reason. It's always nice to see them make an effort to update it and put a little twist on the formula, and I think that's what Tetris Effects has done.
I do hope there is a quote unquote classic mode, so that we go back to the roots of Tetris. My preferred platform still to this day is still the original Nintendo NES, but with the modern UI graphics, all that sort of upgraded, I'm not gonna poo-poo it right now. We'll see how it looks and feels, as long as it stays to its roots.
I will say with Tetris Effects, there is a whole like journey mode that you play through. So it's like
Nice.
you go through levels. It's not like there's a lot of gameplay there.
So moving along, I want to propose a question to you guys. Specifically, Ed, I'll ask you first. Something subtle that I saw. Well, before I get into the subtle piece, what color do you usually associate Sony PlayStation with?
Blue is the first one that comes to mind.
Yes, that is correct. That is the correct answer.
Correct.
I used
That is
blue
usually-
on our thumbnail for the last episode, so.
yeah, and it generally is green is Xbox, blue is PlayStation.
Hmm.
So
Red is Nintendo.
Not white.
correct.
RGB.
So something that actually popped up in the Forza trailer was a car in blue was passed by a car in green at the very end of it. And I thought it was subtle, but I personally, maybe conspiracy theory inside of me, I think that was actually Xbox's, subtle way of being like, hey, Xbox is passing PlayStation on the final turn. And time will tell, but I'm alluding to, of course, the Forza Motorsport trailer. I'm a bit of a racing fan myself. I know we talked about this a little bit last episode with Gran Turismo. Didn't necessarily buy the last edition of Motorsport, just with so many microtransactions and so much other mess happening. I'm really looking for them to, again, go back to the roots, as I was talking about with Tetris a second ago as well. So they didn't show any gameplay. It was purely in-engine cinematics. Of course, nothing less than what you expected. Looked visually stunning. Let's just wait and see on exactly how the cars react and feel. So do we have any other racing fans? Ryan, I don't think you're much of a racing fan, are you?
Arcade racing, Mario Kart, yeah.
True.
We mentioned
of course,
before.
Of course.
And I think I have to say this, I think your interpretation of that green car passing a blue car is a little bit of hopeful thinking, just like, or wishful thinking, just like the wishful thinking of gameplay in this racing trailer.
Yeah.
Wishful. Yeah, no gameplay again.
An elegant segue there.
Technically, slice and hairs, it was an engine, but of course it was all cinematics. I don't know. I can't recall now. I think the replay of the cars passing one another, I think that was all sort of like a replay within a previous race kind of approach. So anybody else have anything to share before we move on from Forza?
I would just say, I believe they said similar to Halo Infinite that this one is, this is the Forza for Xbox Series X, and it will be supported for a while. And I think that this is a series that benefits from that approach. There have been many Forzas and Forza Horizon, so like, especially with Game Pass, you just keep subscribing and play it over the years, and hopefully it keeps getting better and better.
Right.
Yeah, let me ask you, Mark. How do you feel about this new Forza dropping the number continuity? And isn't the first Forza also called Forza Motorsport? And what are your thoughts and feelings about, the titling where they use an old name as sort of like a reboot type situation?
I think they're doing something very similar to Halo 5 recently, the Halo series recently with Halo Infinite. Kind of also reminds me of everything happening with Gears as well. Gears dropped of War. Technically, Gears 5 is Gears 5. They no longer have.
But they kept the number, so it sticks out
True.
where it should be in the continuity.
True. But yeah, as far as Forza Motorsport, at first, like, are we still definitive? Is that in concrete? Is it not going to be called 8? I believe is where they're up to in the series. I'm losing track just with how many there have been. To be honest, it's not a huge deal as far as name conventions and whatnot. It kind of hurts me a little bit deep down inside. Same thing that happened with Doom years back with, you have a Doom 2020 versus the original from years back as well. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to gameplay, and that's where we'll be at, whether that's a launch title or not. I can't remember the specifics on the timing with that.
Yeah,
I think numbering sequels is kind of out of vogue these days. I mean, there's a lot of games where either they just
do a reboot with the same title, or they do a sequel but it doesn't have a number in it. I don't know. And even the Xbox, where's the number there? Numbers aren't cool
Exactly.
anymore.
I think my opinion is numbers are still good, and there's different ways to handle it. Depends on the brand and how it works, because you can look at multiple different types of games and series and the way they handle numbering. And my preference is if you're going to keep doing iterations, there's no real reason not to do a number. But if you're going to do something like, okay, and this is my interpretation of what's going on here with this new Forza. Yeah, they're like, okay, we're going to kind of make this long-lasting platform of the Forza, and so we'll probably take inspiration from a bunch of stuff, but we want this to just straight up be Forza, and that's how we want it to be. But it's like, it still could be Forza Infinite, for example, or, they could do a nice indicative subtitle. It doesn't have to be infinite, but
Sure.
to say that to help make people understand, no, this isn't that. Even though there's time passed, and I get that that's kind of what they do is like, well, there's tons of new people that have never played the first one, so who cares? But I'm like, I just feel that it gets it confusing in the long term, and
Of course.
once again, there are smarter ways to do it that don't rely on believing your audience is dumb.
If we want to go even a little bit deeper in it, in my opinion, I honestly think that alludes to sort of the end of an era, because you can't just go back to an 8, a 9, and 10. Like, you have this one game that's slightly off different. So are they going to reshift and rebrand in the future? Of course, I don't know. It's all speculation, but
If they
I
call
know
the
they've
next
had
Forza Horizon just Forza Horizon, how are you going to feel about that?
that would again drive me a little bit crazy. But I think they've had some, pun intended, some bumps in the road lately with at least their motorsport series. Again, going back to the microtransactions and just the online community not being necessarily super positive. And I stopped playing the last game because, every single race, turn one, I was getting driven into the barriers, and it's not fun when that continues to happen. And they erased lobbies that were so fun with, don't need to get into all the specifics, but I'm hoping that, again, by renaming it, they're acknowledging that they've messed up in the past and they're going back to their roots. So only time will tell, but definitely have my eyes set on that. That was another game that was a must buy or must, download through Game Pass, whatever it may be. It's moot point in my book. So moving along, shifting gears here, let those puns continue.
Heyo.
The worst kept secret in my book was this new Fable game coming out. Not necessarily a huge fan of the Fable series, never actually played one myself, but they canned the last one that was in development, but then they kind of revitalized, or the studio came back to life. And you may hear my dog in the background, so I apologize. So it's one of those games that I feel like we all sort of saw coming, and was cool to see that at the very end and end of the showcase, that is. So I know we're kind of getting to the bottom of our specific games, but did you guys have anything to kind of add to Fable? Did it intrigue you, Ryan? Is it something that is a storyline that you've dove into yourself?
I'm interested in action RPGs, but I haven't delved into the previous Fable games, mainly because at the time I didn't really own an Xbox at the times when it made sense. Was Fable 2 360 or original? Do you remember offhand?
I don't remember this.
I know Fable 3 was 360. But yeah, so I didn't really delve into them because they always sound like they had some jank and whatnot. But hopefully they'll maybe remaster them, bring them to Game Pass, and I'd be willing to download them, give them a try. Fable 1 I know is lauded by the Xbox fan base, and it's a signature series, and it's one of the more interesting, iconic series that I think that gives Xbox as a brand a lot of flavor that they need.
Right.
And that's the thing. I think they need to really embrace having these flavorful games. And I think, despite the fact that Sea of Thieves is kind of there, it's like Sea of Thieves. I don't really see it making waves in the fan base. If we're gonna keep going with the puns,
let's do it.
But I'm interested, and I just have to repeat, funny trailer, no gameplay. That was disappointing. And at this point, they should have had something.
Well, I think we're years away though from this game actually existing.
Which once again is kind of a letdown. Why? You should have been ready.
But
Especially after Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Especially after the huge mess up with the previous Fable game that they tried to launch on Xbox One that was supposed to be the asymmetrical multiplayer, which not a bad concept in general, but they just didn't feel confident in what they had. It's as soon as that was done, you should have recognized okay, signature series, that one didn't work. Let's go on to the next one. Let's get this ready. Oh, we're almost done with it, but we're getting ready for the next generation console. Let's move our stuff over here and let's show off something. Like, it just feels like in the background, this is just coming together at the very end. Like, they were letting it go. And I know there was some inside baseball issues with the Fable license and stuff like that, but as soon as that was settled, it's just one of those things where I think Microsoft still hasn't fixed their management for development. They've bought all these studios, so it sounds like they're getting there, and we just have to kind of wait for that. It's just kind of disappointing that like these big signature titles aren't like kind of being pushed forward. But hey, happy it got announced in general. Trailer was funny, feels Fable, so excited to see what does come of it.
So you're saying that teaser didn't really tell a tale for you? So I needed to get my pun in.
Frog ate a fairy. That was funny. Not all tales and happy endings.
Yeah, I did like that very last part there. All right, so let's keep moving along. The next game that I wanted to chat about was The Medium. Mike,
Yes.
you had, well, Ryan, I know you're super excited. Let's start with
yeah,
you. What did you kind of think about that trailer?
More gameplay was shown. It's great. I love the aesthetic. I'm digging it. I want to know what's going on there. I hope it's just not pure horror or pure stealth. I hope there's like some way to defend yourself and fight back. That's pretty much my main sticking point with horror games, because like I like Resident Evil where I have a chance to fight back even though it's overwhelming odds, rather than pure stealth games where, hey, if you get caught, game over, restart checkpoint. That's how I feel. Glad to see more of it. Just want a release date. Let me play it.
Yeah, and did you get vibes of, Alan Wake or Quantum Break, is it?
A lot of comparisons are going around that it feels like not Silent Hill, which I think makes a lot of sense because of the dual world aspect. Alan Wake, definitely, but Remedy is currently working on their expansions for Control, and it's rumored that there's going to be a direct Alan Wake connection with the last DLC pack that should hopefully be out in time for the Steam release, so I'll be able to play Control with all its DLC when that drops at the end of August, I believe. I just looked at my invisible watch on my wrist to check the time. I'm looking forward to that. But yes, the horror vibes and stuff like that, it does have something of a Alan Wake vibe as well. So who knows? Maybe that. But I think it's just pure third-party title, and I think Remedy's like a second party.
And did you get the vibe that, when they were showing the split screen of the two different worlds happening at the same time, did you get the vibe that that was actually going to be how the gameplay was going to be shown, as if, you were looking at two different screens at the same time? Or was that just trying to showcase the graphics and, maybe there's a button that you need to press to switch between both worlds?
When they first showed it, my interpretation was, oh, cool, they're showing the next-gen tech of dual rendering. Then they kept showing some split screen stuff, and I'm like, wait, are they going to do segments where I have to split? But I landed on, no, it's going to be like Halo Anniversary, where you're probably going to press a button and you're just going to switch between the two worlds, and that's going to be a gameplay conceit that is they're capable of doing now thanks to next-gen loading technology. So that sounds really impressive, and I'm totally in for that kind of gimmick.
Yeah, I'm excited. It looked very different, and that's kind of what caught me more than anything else. So we'll see what is in store from The Medium. All right, so the next game on my list that I thought was pretty interesting was the Gunk. And Ed, I know you had a couple thoughts on that. So what did you think?
I know the developer is Image and Form. They're behind one of my favorite indie series, which is the SteamWorld Dig series. What that series does interesting is it kind of lets you transform the environment. In this case, it's a 2D side scroller, but where you're digging down, you're kind of making your own path, the map. So if they can translate that into something interesting, where maybe this Gunk, you have choices of how you can form the environment, choices of how you can alter it. I could see it being a lot of fun, but that's really what intrigues me, as I've liked their work before, and it seems like they have maybe a similar concept in some ways. So I know that one is an Xbox exclusive, so that one I'd have to get the Xbox to be able to play.
Right. So you also mentioned the SteamWorld series. Is that something you did say that you have played? You're a big fan
Yeah,
of?
I've played SteamWorld Dig 1 and 2. Both of those are really great. And SteamWorld Dig 1 was great, and the second one was even better. So they have also done some other SteamWorld series. Some of them are like some turn-based strategy RPG. I haven't played those. I think they have a pretty good track record of quality releases.
No,
So I
absolutely.
you have some faith that Gunk will be
That
good.
was that was something that actually caught my eye when I was kind of buying into the Nintendo ecosystem just a couple years back. It was decades before since I had a Nintendo console without going into too much more detail. But anyway, looking at top selling games, I always noticed that SteamWorld or that series was like right at the very top. So yeah, that what you said about that series and how it kind of may translate into the gunk, that only adds, I think, in my book, more authority and like more reason to be interested and excited about a game like that. So
I thought it looked really nice too. It's not a
for sure.
realistic art style, but it seems like whatever they're doing to actually make that substance work in terms of vacuuming it up is impressive.
I agree with that on that. It's the art direction looks really good. I really like exploring strange, interesting alien worlds. So I was totally intrigued by that. And then also, it seemed like a pretty indicative presentation of what the gameplay is going to be like. It does seem more linear to me, but that could just be the way the trailer's shot. But I'm completely fine with that. So I'm looking forward to learning more.
Yeah,
Steamworld games are pretty linear. I wouldn't say there's you basically dig from top to bottom and go up and the I can't say that I've noticed a lot of non-linearity in their game. So
Oh, okay.
I think you're probably right that it's going to be in that direction.
I misunderstood what you were saying. Mike, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, visually, like this looks a lot different than anything we've seen in SteamWorld Dig before, and I like the new mechanics that this game seems to introduce with the mechanical arm that cleans up garbage or gunk. Seems like an interesting puzzle game, and I would be excited to try this game out, or I am excited to try this game out.
Mike, you'll like this analogy. I read someone online or heard someone online say they called the gunk reverse Super Mario Sunshine.
That's funny.
I just wish it wasn't called the Gunk. I don't know if it's a bad name.
What?
But
That's hilarious. No, that's the best name.
Well, I think it's a good name, but I kind of worry that that's going to turn some people off. Like it does. I don't know if you don't know about this game and you're browsing the Xbox store and see a game called The Gunk, you're going to be like, oh, that sounds great. It doesn't seem like it's the most marketable name, but maybe the SEO is good. I bet you search The Gunk, that's the only thing that comes up.
No, I think the SEO will probably be the only actual problem. Whereas the name, like, think about it. The Wii, Nintendo called the system the Wii, and look how well that sold. People really don't care about dumb names. If anything, it gets people to talk about it more. But yeah, the SEO actually is probably going to be. You're going to have to turn on some safe search settings. Or got to make sure you go the Gunk. Nope. The Gunk game also is probably a thing I've seen on Steam that might have been delisted.
I don't know. I searched The Gunk and top 10 results are all related to the game, but maybe that's just because it's recent.
And your personalization.
Oh yeah, they know what I like.
They know you like the Gunk.
All right, enough about the gunk. Mike, did you have any other kind of final thoughts, any call outs to any specific games that you saw from the presentation?
No, I mean, the highlight for me was obviously Halo Infinite. Psychonauts 2 looked good. Tetris Effects Connected, I'm interested in. And the Gunk. Those were pretty much the games that caught my eye. And there's a lot of other games on there for different types of gamers. And I think, yeah, Microsoft is really trying to, branch out and to different types of games, which is pretty cool, I think.
Sure. Yeah, and Ed, same question over to you. I think I already know the answer based on us talking about the gunk. Was there any other call outs that sort of caught your eye?
I've never played a game like this before in the series, but the new Phantasy Star Online 2 looked intriguing. From what I know, it seems like the current release on Windows is not the easiest to get into, but I'd be willing to give it a shot if they polished it up. It's hard to even say whether it's like an expansion or just a kind of definitive version. But I will be interested to hear more about it.
I am interested in that because of action RPG stuff, and I've been looking into. I thought maybe Phantasy Star Online 2 when it came here because I've heard so much about Phantasy Star Online 1, and it seems like it's much more in line with the kind of stuff or the kind of online RPG experience I want to play. You go on a mission, kind kind of drop in, drop out co-op. It's only 4 players. And so I was looking at this and I saw this gameplay and I'm like, holy crap, are they making like a new action Phantasy Star game? And then it turns out it's online. So when reviewing and looking for more information, and apparently there's some more information on the Japanese site and some press release stuff, it is going to be a new title. And from what I understand right now, facts could totally change, but the understanding net right now is this is essentially going to be a Realm Reborn Final Fantasy XIV situation where
That's
they're
exactly what I heard. I was just gonna bring that up if you didn't.
yeah. So for those who don't understand what that is, Square Enix tried to make a sequel to Final Fantasy XI Online, which was their big MMORPG for Final Fantasy, and they released Final Fantasy XIV Online, and it was a very poorly made game. People still played it because of Final Fantasy branding and liking MMOs, etc. But they ended up canning it and creating like a canon end to it, and they essentially took it offline. And then they completely re-overhauled the game and then put it back out as a Realm Reborn, Final Fantasy XIV Online, etc. And then it took off and was super popular, and all the people who like that said it was really good. So for this, it seems like the jank you were alluding to, Ed, is going to be fixed. It looks like they're changing stuff from people I watched online who are who have played Fantasy PSO 2 and have seen the enemies and stuff. They're like, there's stuff in here that is new, completely brand new. It's much more open. The mobility stuff is new. The combat stuff is new. The enemy designs were new. So it looks like that they're just keeping the branding and they're just going for a complete overhaul of it, and they'll probably release it as a separate product using next gen technology and stuff like that. I hope it doesn't really play like an MMO. It looks very actiony, so I'd really like to get into it, especially if it's going to be on Game Pass. And just bonus information here, it seems like Microsoft might be involved because for the US, it's going to be on Xbox One, Xbox, maybe it might be on Xbox One, but Xbox Series X and through PC, Windows Store, whereas the Japanese page shows it's going to be on PlayStation 4 in Japan and on Switch via streaming capability. So that's the current information we have right now as we understand it. So yeah, I definitely am going to be looking out to see if that'd be good because I'm always looking for new action RPG co-op stuff, and I'd play it with you guys and give it a shot.
Hey, if it's on Game Pass, it sounds like I just might be pressured into getting an Xbox.
Heck yeah.
Gotta play with everyone. Does anyone else have any games to comment on? Because I might continue with that.
I did have.
Well, I want to actually propose that question back to you. I think we were all square, but Ed, while I got you, what was the number one game that kind of stood out to you going back to the PlayStation event? This Xbox presentation was certainly kind of that direct comparison to PlayStation, but was there any, like, what was that one game that you felt really drove the show for that PlayStation event?
For me in the PlayStation event, it would have to be the new Ratchet and Clank game.
Yeah.
I think it really looked like it is taking advantage of the power and unique features of the PlayStation 5. I don't know if I've ever played a Ratchet and Clank game where I didn't have fun with it. So that will probably be the one that gets me to buy a PlayStation 5.
Okay. Same question, Mike, over to you.
I would say probably the Spider-Man Miles Morales, just coming from the last one, beating that recently, and kind of hyped for the new one. So that would be it for me.
Cool, thank you. And then lastly, last but not least, Ryan, what was the one call out from that show that you felt like was bigger than anything else?
From the PlayStation event?
Exactly.
Yeah, you already brought up Spider-Man. I'm super hyped for Horizon, but I didn't really see much of a tease for that. So the biggest surprise for me was definitely the Kena game. I forget what the subtitle was, but that new one with the little black creatures and the girl who was using magic with the staff that could turn into a bow. That one was probably the one that stuck out to me the most. Is like, I can't wait to play that.
Interesting. Cool. Yeah, and for me, I think Gran Turismo looks super cool. I think Ratchet also is probably right up there with me as well. But ultimately, where I'm going with this is, from my standpoint, I think the amount of attention that Halo has, I think competing directly with those 3 or 4 titles that we just gave, I think overall Xbox is in a really good position. I think it has a lot of eyes on it. So I know, without going too deep into controversy with all the likes and dislikes on YouTube, I think the event overall went very well from an Xbox standpoint. So looking into the future, that's kind of where we're headed next. What everyone is kind of looking for in this next event, and Mike, I'll kind of throw this over your way. Is there one piece of hardware, software, anything else that you're kind of looking for that maybe you haven't seen yet from the two events that we've seen so far?
Yes, I want to see a new Banjo 3, and also I think it would be cool if they announced Cuphead 2. I don't think that's been announced yet. So those would be the two for me.
So all games focused.
Pardon?
Big focus on all the games then.
Yeah, and also I did have a question about. It seems like Microsoft kind of backpedaled on the fact that there wouldn't be exclusives on the Xbox in the next 2 years. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I did. I saw that, and other people online noticed this as well. Some of the trailer reveals did not have the Xbox One logo at the end. They only had Series X and PC. So the only two conclusions to that are really that they're more than 1 or 2 years out, or that Xbox is maybe a little more open to having console exclusives. So that would be a little disappointing if I were someone who had an Xbox One and wasn't that keen to upgrade.
yeah, that's and again, I'm glad that you brought that up, Mike, because I haven't dove into all the nitty gritty details, but I had read that just last week they said that there's not going to be these exclusives, and just as Ed was mentioning too, it might be a little bit of time before Forza Motorsport, that is, comes out on the current generation that we're on right now. So I don't know. I'm fortunate in a position right now that I could likely get the next generation if and when they are out, but
I thought the promise currently was that within the first year, Microsoft was promising that there weren't going to be exclusives for Xbox Series X. So I don't know if that's the statement they're backpedaling on, and now there could be something within the first 12 months, let's say, from release. However, the other wrinkle, which we didn't get details on, but I'm sure is forthcoming at some point, is also with xCloud. So some of these games could be shifting to more Series X level development, but if xCloud still gets supported on Xbox One hardware and they just provide access via that, then that still kind of fulfills their promise as well. You just have to have the xCloud, which is going to be part of Game Pass Ultimate, or Xbox Live Game Pass Ultimate. I forget the exact thing. So there's a way that they could still come around on that. At the same time, progress is inevitable. The new hardware is going to play old games and new games better. So people will just upgrade when it feels like it, and it just creates a reason and a validation for it. Plus, there's all the backwards compatibility. So I think the customers will still be served, even if they do backpedal on their promise, I guess, for no exclusives that first 12 months.
yeah, there's a lot of gray area in that, especially with xCloud, because technically you, in a way, could play Xbox Series X games on any potential platform, or sorry, any potential device.
Play it on a phone. You own a phone, right?
Exactly. Though,
Thanks, Blizzard.
I think a lot of the true diehards, I guess, I think that the community is right now still split, and a little, we're not so defined in the direction that we're going necessarily. Cloud is definitely the future from what it seems, but for one, personally, without spending too much time, I'm not super crazy about it. I also have a PC game, or a gaming PC, a Switch, an Xbox, so I'm fortunate on that front that I can play on the device of my choosing. Wanted to stay on that question though for just another minute. Ryan, what are you looking for from the next Xbox event? Is it, like Mike was saying a minute ago, more game focused? Is it anything hardware, UI, anything else?
Hardware wise, I was thinking about that because I was trying to think what else they could do for the hardware. I've stated before I want to try that controller. I'm a little
Right.
disappointed they didn't put back bumpers on that and just standardize it. I know with the Elite controllers, that's a big selling point, and I'm not asking for like
Absolutely.
the customization on it, or even like that I need 4 back bumpers. Just even 2 extra buttons, just those under bumpers on there would be nice. The D-pad is what really interests me, but I'd like to try it just because the Xbox controllers are the most natively compatible with Windows on PC, especially with the Xbox app. It just doesn't recognize other controllers at this time, which hopefully they'll adjust that a little bit. But regardless, the Xbox One controllers are still really good, and I feel even better about the Series X controllers. So hardware-wise, yeah, that'd be cool if there was some other stuff there. I'm really curious what else they'll do with the series branding. I was actually speculating in what they could possibly do, and I think I want to save that for a different conversation on what other types of boxes they might put out. And we have speculated, or we're aware of the rumors that there's their own new digital edition, the quote unquote potential Series S. And I think we talked offline a little bit about possibly will Microsoft reinvest in VR, and so they could do a Series VR box that's more tailored to supporting headsets, and we could see something like that. So an instance like that, other than just obviously I want to see the price and the release date, just because I want that information out there to speculate on and compare. So we stop worrying about or thinking about that, and it's just there to talk about. But most of my stuff is software related, or Game Pass is obviously a great deal. I hope they keep that going. Sure. I wonder if they'll expand it or if they'll have more details about xCloud. But yeah, with games, I kind of echoed a lot of what Mike was saying. That I would love to see a new Banjo. I think that should become a signature title for them, and they should embrace that. Especially have some more family-friendly games that are part of the Xbox name. They haven't said anything about the new Battletoads yet, and I really want there to be information for that, because that could be a nice, fun little party beat-em-up. The Cuphead DLC has gone dark. Maybe it's become Cuphead 2, or maybe they're just taking more time to make it a really big expansion. Who knows? And then there was also the rumors about WB Games being up for sale, which would include NetherRealm Studios, the makers of Mortal Kombat. I want to see Microsoft and Xbox continue to bring more Killer Instinct content, so I'm hoping that what they're doing is they're just completely migrating Killer Instinct over, plus introducing new characters and modes and refining everything with upgrades to the engine and whatnot in the Series X power, so I hope that. But if the rumors end up being true, or if anything happens and Microsoft ends up acquiring some of the stuff from WB Games, if they get NetherRealm Studios, Killer Instinct and Mortal Kombat mesh really well aesthetically, and there being like some sort of crossover game, not necessarily like merging it going forward, but like a Marvel vs. Capcom style, like Killer Instinct versus Mortal Kombat, that could be really cool, and that could get a lot of people talking.
Yeah, I would be so ecstatic if that's what happened. And Phil Spencer, he did say, and I meant to bring this up earlier when we were talking about the 15 different studios, he did make it very clear that, Microsoft or Xbox, I should say, they are not currently done with acquisitions. So, it was around the same timing that it was being mentioned in the news that AT&T was looking to sell WB, but we'll see. I think that would change the gaming industry for quite some time. I think we're looking decades out, things would happen. So that would be massive, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
as I say, with regards to all the acquisitions, I think Sony and Nintendo better get worried. I mean, if Microsoft buys up all the studios, who's going to be left to make their games? I mean, Sony bought Insomniac last year, and I don't know if they were feeling the pressure from Microsoft right now at all those checks, but
if I may have,
that could cause a big change in the gaming industry, just all that consolidation.
On that point, if I might have just a short tangent, I was thinking about the different studios and things like that, and this drastic difference in style between Japanese games and Western games. And I am a very big fan of Japanese games. I just think there's a specific way that they look and feel that is really appealing to me. And that's one of the stark things that Xbox has kind of struggled with. They've tried to break into the Japanese market, which, granted, it's not the biggest market, but it's kind of important. It has a lot of gaming historical context, and that's where Sony and Nintendo are from. So the Western studios they've acquired so far, I feel like they haven't, and I just don't understand why I'm not seeing a lot of Western-style games that try to mimic some of what we see coming out of Japan. Not necessarily that they have to, and of course the indie scene does take inspiration, because we pretty much all the industry grew up on Japanese games. But I think Nintendo is going to be fine, because they always do their own weird thing that just puts them in a different situation. And Sony's just got their first party title creation thing like on lock, as far as I'm concerned. So I think we just need to see Microsoft kind of take some risks and get some more focused. And that's where I see some of the other games, like Obsidian. They've got Grounded, and Grounded's like the new thing they're making. They're also making Avowed, which is basically a Skyrim looking game. So of course you're going to hit that note, and I hope that's a lot of fun for people who want to play that. But yeah, I do feel like they kind of need to branch out and get a little crazy, and everything feels just either by the numbers and too safe, or like follow the leader. Like luckily Microsoft hasn't announced their own battle royale, which hopefully isn't going to be like Fortnite. They're just kind of embracing other third-party studios, which I think is the smarter play. But yeah, it's just curious.
I think they
They'll
also
probably buy Fortnite.
Oh, Epic. I think Epic's got more money, almost more money than
Yeah.
Microsoft at this point.
yeah they
Well,
have to.
not the company, but maybe the Xbox. The only thing that I would be looking for in a next Xbox event, I mean, I'm excited to see what more games they're going to announce, but really for me, it's about the hardware. I want to know what SKUs they're going to have, what the price is going to be. I mean, I know it's rumored that people say that even the Series X is going to be affordable, but if they have a Series S, if they hit like, a $200 price point for something that, can still play the games, maybe it's not 4K 60, but even 1080 60 would be fine for me. But 200 is really, that's pretty much within impulse buying range for me. So
Yeah.
I could definitely see myself getting that just to play the Game Pass games, especially if you guys or other people I know are into trying all the multiplayer options that come out, because Microsoft really knows how to do those online games, at least compared to the competition.
Don't-
They seem to be leading in that realm.
Don't forget about those proprietary SSD hard drives that you'll have to buy.
I
as
know
well.
they're probably going to make the S is going to have like a 256 gigabyte hard drive, store like 2 games on it.
Well, they haven't denied that you can't use external storage, from what I've gathered.
They did.
They did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to buy the Seagate specially made for Xbox Series.
If I'm
Okay.
remembering correctly, because I might
We're
be
even
messing up.
talking USB.
Yeah, I was getting to that because I might be messing up with PlayStation as well. I forget which information. So I'll just state it as is, and we can fact check later. So audience, I may be super wrong on this, but I know I've heard this detail. I just can't remember if it's PlayStation and Xbox or one or the other.
Well, I can defend it.
Oh, okay.
It is
So
in fact an expandable proprietary memory card for Xbox Series X. There's actually I think Seagate even has a page up kind of teasing what it's going to be. They don't have a price up. And then the approach that PlayStation is taking is they're allowing you to use whatever bus that they use. I don't know if it's PCI Express or I don't know, but they are going to be certifying drives saying, this has the performance to work with the PS5, but you will have more options for PlayStation than you will with Xbox. So in theory, that will make it less expensive to expand for PlayStation.
yes, most of
I
that is
just hope it's not like a Vita situation where you have these proprietary memory cards, but I think Xbox is probably smart enough to maybe not. I think they know what people are willing to pay, and they know that that's a decision that can really limit the appeal of a console.
yes, most of that is exactly what I heard as well. So just to quickly clarify where I was going was, yes, Microsoft's Series X will require a proprietary expansion. They have a dedicated port on there that will use something similar to what's inside, and Seagate they are partnered with to make those memory cards. They're currently 1 terabyte size guaranteed. I'm pretty sure it's guaranteed for expansion, so that's how that works. And then PlayStation will have its own built-in one, and then you're allowed to put in third-party ones in an expansion drive as long as it matches the minimum speed requirement, and they're going to release a list of compatible things at the time of release, and that list will obviously grow over time. The thing I was getting at that I can't remember who it was for or if it was for both was that you can plug in external hard drives of regular disks or solid states that are lower speed than the internal, but you can only use them for backwards compatible games, such as, so I'm pretty sure it's Xbox One, or maybe it might have been for PS4 as well. Like, yeah, you can only run your PS4 and Xbox One titles on the new consoles through those older hard drives. You wouldn't be able to download new ones. You have to do it on the newer tech in order to support the newer generation of games. That's where I was kind of confused, but everything else Ed said was what I'd heard as well.
Yeah, that's interesting, especially current generation. I bought, I think, a terabyte or maybe, yeah, I think it was a terabyte external storage, pretty inexpensive, plugged it in, and the games do load faster. A lot of the community has done sort of internal research and speed testing and determined that, yeah, installing your games like Halo 5 and others onto an external device will actually load them quicker than the internal storage, which has, believe me, puzzled me from the dawn of time, but it is what it is as far as the real world outcome. So, maybe they figured it out and have the M.2 or SSD storage that is directly connected to the motherboard and things are a lot quicker.
Yeah, the new solid state drives have incredibly high read speeds, and we talked about this when we were talking about like PC building and the different types of hard drives. You can even see on PC gaming, having a solid state drive improves loading times on current gen games. The only thing that's now really different is since the consoles have a dedicated modern solid state drive, the games can now be properly optimized and built to take advantage of that. And I forget if, once again, if it was Microsoft or PlayStation that said like they're specifically building games in order. I know PlayStation's marketed it a lot, but I forget if Xbox said something similar, where being able to run stuff from the solid state drive just reads so much faster, and they can achieve loading speeds for assets in game in real time way better. And they're using that as kind of like virtual memory instead of just like relying
Right.
on the video RAM. They can use hard drive for RAM storage as well, or I'm probably messing that up in the exact language, but that's what I was taking away from it, is that they can use the hard drives now as well as additional memory for games to help with loading and performance.
We will see. I can't really weigh in too much more there, but I do want to go back to something that we were talking about, just kind of the future. I didn't get to necessarily weigh in there, but I know you guys were kind of looking more for games and how things are going to operate. Ed, you were also throwing out a price point potentially of $200. That would be completely shocking. I think we're going to be looking at prices more than double that. But again, only time will tell. I don't think that Microsoft is, you know, they don't necessarily need to throw a price out quite yet, especially since the holiday 2020 is still not a definitive necessarily window. We need a more solid date, which I think will come eventually. But something, besides the controllers, the accessories like the headsets, are we getting a stock headset? How is that going to work? They've really been expanding in the current generation. So to see something with a little bit more quality would be exciting. But I'm most interested about the UI and how the software really works, not in terms of the gaming software, but the dashboard. That was something that they rocked it in Xbox 360 and then Xbox One. It's always been sluggish and glitchy. They've had so many iterations, and I think all the platforms sort of do, with the only exception being PC is exactly what you want to make of it. But I want to see how that UI is going to be. It needs to be super fast and just also knock it out of the park. So, Ryan, are you kind of in the same ballpark? Do you feel like the UI on the Xbox One has kind of been a little sluggish in years prior?
Absolutely, and they've been trying to fix it to my understanding. I haven't actually been using an Xbox for a long time. So, from what I remember and from some of the few experiences I've seen, I think being over hanging out with you and seeing how the Xbox dashboard works at the current time, it's just definitely not optimized. And Microsoft had a weird identity issue where they were focusing too much on non-gaming, but they're
Yeah.
trying to straddle this weird line between, well, we've got to try and sell you on everything, so we have to show you your games tab second. And it's like,
Well,
guys, just like, I hope they learn from fan feedback and go more towards the Switch type of dashboard where it's like, hey, your games front and center, and then we have some ads in the corner.
right.
And I thought Larry Herb posted on Twitter like a preview of the new the Series X dashboard, or was I mistaken?
I may have missed that. I do follow him pretty closely, but yeah, that's something that I may have missed myself. But you brought up a good point though about the
Major
identity
Nelson.
crisis. Yeah, you're right though. They were really focused in on incorporating the HDMI in from your cable box and being able to watch TV and that whole media sort of play. And about halfway through the life cycle, it just kind of got killed in a way. They got rid of the picture-in-picture thing, which was something that I loved doing. Like I was playing a game while I had an NHL game in the corner of the screen, and they eliminated that years into the life cycle. And that, in my book, that was a huge loss. So if they don't bring picture in picture back, I would be upset. It's not going to be a game breaker, because I'm still kind of going back and forth on the fence as far as when am I going to get one if I do. Also being PC gamer myself. So again, another one of those details we will see. I would be upset though if we didn't have picture at the very least.
Well, there's a couple workarounds for that feature because I'm sure they would have kept supporting it if people were actively using it. At the same time, it was a memory issue for the Xbox One of the current generation, that issue with available memory. So that obviously was part of it. The new systems, they're touting that you're going to be able to pause and resume multiple games, so you'll be able to have multiple games. Not sure how many, but you'll be able to like save your state, kind of like how currently today we can, at least if we're in the middle of a game and we need to run and leave the house for maybe an hour or two, or at least an extended period of time, you can just completely kind of key C, put the system to sleep. The game is automatically saving the state and holds it, and then you just come back and you just auto resume that one. And now we'll be able to have that for multiple games at once with the memory there. So it seems like you'd be able to easily do picture-in-picture. The other time, if you really wanted to watch something on the side, you can have a phone, a tablet, a laptop, etc. on the side. So it's almost like a weird complaint that you're like, no, I want a second screen on the one screen I'm looking at. You know, it's kind of a weird, it's like a weird complaint. It's a first world problem.
Sure. And you're right. Would I rather be able to flip and flop around 3 or 4 different games, or be able to watch, some hockey games while I'm also playing games? You're right. So any other kind of final thoughts where I kind of wanted to end things was, did this event change anybody's opinion? Ed, I know you specifically were kind of saying, the Game Pass and just the featured game list has kind of been more intriguing to you as more of a PlayStation fan yourself. Did you have anything else to add on that? And then I'll open it up for Mike and Ryan as well.
It just all comes down to what the entry point is to me. I guess I don't really feel the need to get a PlayStation 5 because I know the library is going to be pretty limited for the first year or two, but I don't actually have an Xbox One. So if I were able to get Series X and have, or Series S, whatever the option is, and have a Game Pass and be able to play a lot of those past games that are backwards compatible, even back to the Xbox. They might not all be Game Pass, but I could certainly download them. That would be appealing to me, and it would, might even save me some money. Maybe there's a lot of games like Game Pass that I would buy on PlayStation 4, but I wouldn't have to with Game Pass. And other people I know, you guys are on Xbox and wanting to play multiplayer games, that would give me more options, because we can only play Mario Kart so many times, you can play it unlimited times, but sometimes you need a break.
And Mike, what are you thinking?
As far as the whole presentation goes, I thought, one other thing that I wanted to mention is, can we get rid of that, the thing they say in front of before each game starts?
Xbox launch exclusive.
World premiere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That wasn't working.
Can that go away, please?
Now we know who is paying attention.
Yeah, I know. I failed the test.
No,
But
I don't
what
want
else
it
were you
to. I don't want it to go away.
Well, they can say it once. They don't have to say it like in front of every single game. I don't know.
They
thought it was
don't. They
kinda
only say it in
corny.
front of the ones that are world premieres.
Yeah. I think they were just trying to drive that point across. These are the first time these things are being showcased on the stage like that. So it was, I think, from a marketing and media perspective, I think that was more for them than say, hey, we would have been watching this regardless, and okay, we get it. There's another world premiere. It was goofy by halfway through.
Got to use the voice.
I don't know. For my YouTube videos, should I say world premiere? So like
You should.
Video.
Yes.
I guess.
I'm gonna start calling you Mike, the world premiere. I forgot your last name. I'm really sorry. I don't have to say your last name though. So world premiere Mike. That's what we're gonna be.
No, but they
now.
had. I think they had a decent showing. Like they plan on doing these. I think pretty much monthly, right? Like they plan on. That's the take that I got, at least, is that because they did one last month, right?
I think they did make a statement where they said they're going to try and do one monthly.
Yeah, so I thought it was a good showing for what it was, and I didn't think that it wasn't planned. Like, I don't think they were like, oh, Sony did this, so now we have to do this. I think they always had a plan to show off more games and stuff like that. So yeah, I thought it was a good showing.
Great. How about you, Ryan? Any other final thoughts, game-wise, the show itself, to kind of change your opinion at all with regard to, determining whether you're going to buy a PlayStation or the next-gen Xbox?
No, my opinion pretty much still stays the same. They bring all their games to PC. I have a good gaming PC. I have bought into Games Pass on PC, so they're getting my money that way, and I will purchase individual titles of Microsoft Studios as they go. So they'll get my support in that way. I've promised to buy a controller from them, and maybe the Elite Series 3 will be the one when that's got the Series X improvements and stuff like that. So Microsoft could get my money that way. There are some other thoughts I have about the direction they could go with in hardware that might be able to get me to invest more, and I could be swayed. I want to say that for a different conversation. It might be a different topic, but the long and short of it is they could make a series hardware that's more like a PC, and so I buy the Xbox Series PC as my new hardware. Or maybe they should just become a graphics card manufacturer, and then I'm buying the Xbox graphics card to put in my PC, and there you go. So there's things like that I'd love to speculate on.
Yeah.
And I'm down for them making more great games through their studios, through making Game Pass a more incredible service. And I'll look into xCloud. I'm not really convinced on streaming, but I think streaming tech could still provide some useful services, and I think that's worth discussing as well. So I'm optimistic for Xbox, even if I'm not buying the console.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention, I probably won't be upgrading for the next 2 years at least, because I already have an Xbox, so I can play all those great games that are coming out.
Yeah, I'm also in a similar boat. I haven't decided on when. Again, I think I've actually said that maybe a couple of times, but I'm all ears. I think the biggest determining factor for me is going to be that price point. If we're looking at $600, it's going to be tough to do right away. But if there's a minier version or a downgraded version, digital only, there's so many other options. It could be potentially more tempting. So time will tell on exactly how many SKUs there are at launch and exactly what the lineup is in terms of games. So anyone else have any other final thoughts?
I just want to say I don't know if we can promise we'll do a podcast episode dedicated to each of the presentations. I think it'll really be determined based on the content of those presentations. We'll clearly talk about whatever news comes out in future topics as it relates to them, but I just wanted to put that out there for our audience that you shouldn't expect too many dedicated ones unless it's like a huge bombshell and there's a lot to talk about.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear more. This has just been a really exciting year. It's always fun to have a new year when new consoles are coming out. Exciting time to be gaming.
Only happens once every like 10 years. So excited.
All right. I think that pretty much wraps up our reaction to the Xbox showing. Generally, I think everybody's excited to get a little bit more from Halo, get a little bit more game insight in the coming months. But overall, I think good things. Definitely an upgrade from the original event, I guess, depending on who you want to ask on today's lineup. So without further ado, thank you guys for joining and talking opinions, and we'll leave it there.
We'll see you on our next world premiere.
World premiere.
Yeah, hopefully Halo's multiplayer presentation will actually outshine Balan Wonderworld. I'm really hoping for that, but game of the year 2021 already, so it's an uphill battle for Halo Infinite.
You won't let it go.
Not until I've played the game and it proves me wrong. But anyways, all in good humor. Thank you so much, Mark, for guiding this episode and being with us on the Option Menu crew. Thank you, Ed and Mike, as well. Great to have you guys on here. Another great episode. And to our audience, thanks for joining us today. We hope you had some fun, and we will talk to you later.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And we're done. I'm going to stop recording.
Bye.